So, welcome, Divyamaan. The talk is going to be sound art, no input mixing, and the Spencer Brown modulator. And I'm going to put in the link for the student competition again. Also, don't forget, we have the technical musical acoustics meeting today at 5:30 EST on my Zoom. I'm going to present the Zoom link to, and tomorrow we have the telematic concert at 7 o'clock. Thank you. And your stage
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is such a privilege to be here presenting. I am also, this is my first year at the ASA. In the spring semester, the spring session, I delivered a presentation on forest acoustics. And this session, I'm doing a presentation here at musical acoustics. And I also have one toroidal transducers or donut-shaped transducers that's coming up tomorrow at the engineering acoustics technical session. But I'm very, very, very happy to be presenting some work that's very dear to my heart. And so I will just go ahead. I hope you can hear me and see my screen. And if not, please, someone please let me know. All right. So just a brief introduction to what sound art is. I guess the way that I would sort of share it with somebody is like a painter uses paint, a sound artist uses sound. So this is just a few examples of things that I've done. When I attended the technical committee session, the meeting in the spring, I was encouraged to share some of my work and kind of present at this meeting. So just wanted to share some things here very quickly. So this is like a springboard, it's really just a piece of wood and you have a contact mic on it. This is all like very budget stuff, a couple of dollars and stuff, using piezoceramic discs and, just hammering some nails, taking rubber bands, have a glass of water, put a hydrophone in there, so making all these like Foley-like sounds. And this is just me in session collaborating with a puppeteer, who's also doing the same thing, but they're building their own puppets and stuff. So just as an example, here is one kind of way that sound artists do things called the springboard. Then here is just like, this is a piece of driftwood and I had these rocks that I found and I just, basically passed string over it and so I like building instruments and, there's some humor in my work as well. So this is like a broken chair and then you just, another leg and put a string on it, So, I'm a violinist. I also played the piano. I'm formally trained in both of them and the harpsichord. And so, I have a music background, but, I've gone into sound art. So this is used bell bronze. I was in a foundry class where I was using the lost wax method to make things. So it's a sculpture class. I was like, I want to make an instrument. So this is one that I made. It's kind of like a, something. And this is another thing that I'm interested in. It's a Mobius strip. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's a, non-orientable, single strip that with one twist in it. And this is what it sounds like. And I hope it's playing. I don't. Okay. For those of you all who are curious, that's what a Mobius strip sounded like. And this is another experiment I did, which we'll see a little bit later. There's these like photoresistors and, I'm being able to, make another instrument. Anyway, so I just wanted to show you a brief glimpse of that because I kind of want to go through the next things, the meat of this conversation that we're going to have. So, I put some filters, there's some magnifying glass, light, et cetera, and it's a little complicated, but I just wanted to show you also like a score. There's a whole world out there of sound art and, it's great. I love it. It's very dear to me. So just some important pieces in sound art history that I think is relevant to this talk. Again, if this is very basic for you, I apologize, but earlier Dr. Brash talked about feedback and trying to avoid it. This presentation really much embraces feedback and kind of highlights it. So here's a piece by Steve Reich called Pendulum Music. And it's really, if you've taken a microphone and put it in front of the speaker, you hear feedback, and it's just kind of like a tongue-in-cheek thing. So this is pretty much the piece. It's feedback, hanging some microphones and, doing that. So it's kind of funny. It's like Fluxus-esque, again, if you're familiar with Fluxus, it's like sort of like, there's some humor there. And this piece is very important. It's kind of a rite of passage for people who are studying sound art, to listen to this piece. And I highly encourage you to like find it. It's on YouTube, to listen to the whole thing. It's like 30, 40 minutes long. And this is Alvin Lucier, who recites this speech, this piece of text. And, he has a speech impediment. He has a stutter, which is a very important part of the piece. But so he is basically taking the same idea of feedback. He's recording himself speaking, and the sound that he's recorded is being played back in to the speaker. And this is happening again and again. Every iteration, it sounds different. So I'm just going to play a little bit for you.
I am sitting in a room.
I hope you can hear this.
Different from the one you are in now. I am recording the sound of my speaking voice, and I am going to play it back into the room again and again until the resonant frequencies of the room reinforce themselves, so that any semblance of my speech, with perhaps the exception of rhythm, is destroyed.
So I'll just pause it right there. And he continues to say, what you'll hear then are the natural resonant frequencies of the room articulated by speech. So I'm just going to play the first part.
I am sitting in a room different from the one you are in now.
This is the second iteration. And the third iteration.
I am sitting in a room different from the one you are in now. I am sitting in a room different from the one you are in now. I am sitting in a room different from the one you are in now. I am sitting in a room different from the one you are in now.
And then a few cycles later, maybe 5 or 6. Oh no, this is towards the end, sorry. This is what it sounds like. I wish I could fade that out, and I'm sorry to Alvin Lucier for butchering his work, but I just wanted to share that this is really the main idea here is feedback. It's like you take the thing, put it back into itself, and of course there's the art aspect to it, which is very important. So no input mixing is another form of sound art that is really it's like an underground noise kind of thing. It's again, basically, it's I'm not going to go into the history because I want to go through what I wanted to share today. So you take the output of the mixer and you put it back into the input. Nothing else. Of course, you power it. You have the DC in, but there's nothing else happening in the mixer. There's no instrument that's being plugged in. Literally, you're just taking the output and putting it into the input, and you start making sounds. You start see things happening, and that's what no input mixing is. I mean, it's not exactly no input because you're putting in voltage, but you get what I'm saying. You know, you're not putting an instrument in there. Or, you know. So this is an experiment I had. I did not expect to perform live, but I will towards the end of the presentation if I have some time. But I just recorded myself, and this is sort of the patch cables here. So. Just to give you a sample of the weird things, and you know, I wish I could skip around and play the whole thing for you, but you know, you can get some really interesting, strange things. But how is this happening, right? This is like the question. I mean, it's like a dark arts kind of thing. Like if you see people with doing these things, like if you've seen a live performance of this, how are these people doing it? And you know, there's, you know, a lot of people are like, yeah, it's just the instrument, you know, you just learn it and you patch this and that. And some people are like, I'm going to break all my patch cables and start all over again and discover something new. And it's a beautiful thing. It's really a musical instrument. And what I'm going to share today, you know, I have a few minutes, but I'm going to share a very simple, fundamental idea that can translate to no input mixing and helps us to study this a little better, a little more systematically. So I'm going to reference Nick Collins here. He was my professor at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And
the chip we're going to use for our first circuit is a 74C14. This is a CMOS digital logic chip. It's what is known as an inverter. Each output puts out the opposite of what goes into the input. And we're going to adapt a logic chip never intended for making sound into making a square wave oscillator. You start by pressing it into the board.
Okay, so the what he's saying is he's taking an inverter to make sound. It's a logic gate. So, you know, you put a true, you get a false. You put a false, you get a true. But he's taking this circuit and he's putting it back into itself. So once you take a true and you get a false, it inverts to a false, and then you take the false and then put it back in here, then now it's a false. So this false flips and becomes a true, and then the true is fed back to flip and then get a false, and then the false inverts to a true. So you basically get a square wave, is what he's saying. So I'm not going to play this, but you know, because for the sake of time. But he plugs it in, he plays a sound,
now,
and actually, maybe I will.
Now, amplifier. To do that, we plug a line to the ground of the plug, and we connect that to the ground. We take another lead into the amp that we connect to pin 2.
So that's the square wave.
And lo and behold,
so we hear the square wave, right? And that's where Nick starts. He starts with a re-entering inverter. And this is the notation that I'm going to use here. So 1, let's say that's true, 0 is false. So Spencer Brown, he's written this book called Laws of Form. He has this notation for, like, you know, it's basically like a negation. So not 1 is 0. Same thing for not 0 is 1. So, you know, if you have 2 of these inverters, you're inverting twice. It's like not something is something. So it's like you're not doing anything to it. The same thing for if you put a false in, you flip it twice, you know, you get the same thing. Now, what if you take multiple leads and put it in there? That's basically let's say this is a NOR gate, like neither nor. So it's only going to turn true when both of these are false. So that's, now we're going to go here, right? So what about something like this? So if I put a true in, the true flips, and then you have a 1 and a 0, and we know that a 1 and a 0 gives a 0. Everything gives a 0 except when both are 0. So that helps you evaluate a circuit like this. Now with the 0 going in, this is interesting. So if a 0 goes in, you flip it, you get a 1, and now you have a 1 and a 0, which gives you which flips it to a 0, right? And now you have a 0 and a 0, and that's going to give you a 1. And then that 1 carries over, the 1 and the 0 flips to a 0. So basically, you have a 0 that's just giving you a square wave for free. That's basically the lesson here. So you can use these kinds of circuits, these re-entering NOR circuits, to and start studying them, and then add this little guy to start generating square waves, and square waves with a delay. And so Spencer Brown has this kind of circuit that he calls the modulator. Of course, that has a different meaning for people in electrical engineering, but he calls it the modulator or the reductor, basically a re-entering NOR circuit. And you can change a square wave that's going 1010 to something that's going 1001, 1001. So it's like you can change the frequency of the square wave using these re-entering NOR circuits. So that's basically, and then Spencer Brown has modulators that look like this, and that kind of weird and beautiful. But anyway, so that's the end of my talk, and that's what I wanted to share today. Thank you so much.